Howdy and welcome back. In this video we're going to be starting from where we left off in the last one, working with spatial data. However, the goal in this video is going to be to create an interactive map using the watershed process or delineation process we used in the last video. However, adding points within that watershed that have associated temperature data with them, and then we'll create a map where you can click on these different points or these different sites and generate corresponding plots of historic temperature data at that site. So I'm gonna load these packages in here. Most of them are the same as the ones we used in the last video. However, we are going to be plotting in Leaflet and using LeafPop, which is how you plot spatial data. In our last video, I was a little bit lazy and imported into GIS to show how well the watershed delineation worked. However, in this video, I will walk you guys through how to do this, and then we'll also be using Shiny and ggplot to create our interactive map for our Shiny app. I'm not going to go through this watershed delineation process again because I went through it in pretty good detail the first video. However, I will say that one thing I learned is that you don't actually need the full file or the absolute file paths for these white box tools. You set a working directory like variable like this, and then you have this working directory field in the actual tool, and you can set the working directory to the working directory here, and then you don't have to type in the full file path. You can just give it a name like this. So that's a big time saver. But I've already done this process. I'll just load in the watershed that we're going to be working with today, which is the First Branch White River watershed. Very close by to the one we were working with last time. I will plot this in Leaflet just to give you an idea of where it is and how Leaflet works. So I'll just call it Leaflet. We add tiles, and then we're going to be adding a polygon file because that's the watershed, and then give it the data is going to be the First Branch watershed, and there's some aesthetic fields like the weight, weight 2, field color, I like purple, and opacity. We're going to have points within our watershed, so I'll give an opacity of like 0.25, and then this is what shows up. This is our First Branch White River watershed. Our pour point was down here, the confluence with the White River. Here's our watershed. So the goal is to have a map with this watershed and points inside along this river, and then we'll be able to click on these different points, and that will generate different plots of temperature data at each site. So the first thing we're going to want to do is load in our temperature data. So I'll just call this temp data. This is data that I pulled from the EcoSheds database or website. And on that website there's access to a whole lot of public historic stream temperature data, and you'll see a similar interface on that website where there's a map and there's a bunch of points that you can click on, and depending on where you click it generates a plot of kind of the available data at that site. So that's kind of the motivation for this video. There we go. Let's just check it out before we start working with it. See, it's got like the agency and the site code, so we're working with 2 sites today. But you could do this process with a lot more. And there's the date time and the temperature field and that along. And so this date time field is a character, but we're going to want that to be a date class. So what I'll do is just use the LubriDate package to change that. So this is month, day, year, hours, minutes. So month, day, years, hours, minutes, temp, data, date, time. Check it out again. Should be another field. Okay, so this is what we're going to want to work with, but we're going to want to rename that because that is very long. So rename date time equals that, whatever that is. Check it out again. Okay, so we've got a date time here. So we're just going to want to use this all lowercase date time field when we go to plot our data. Okay, nice. The last process, which is kind of the main process, is building our Shiny app and our plotting functions. So building Shiny app and plotting functions, or let's say output functions, because there's going to be a map output and a plot output. So when you're working with Shiny, you're kind of working with this, your UI, which is your user interface, and your server. So first, our UI, kind of what our app or interactive map or page is going to look like. And so there's going to be two columns. One column is going to be where the map is, where the map output is, and the other output is going to be where the plot output is. So let's fluid page columns. The first column is going to be the leaflet output. This will be the watershed map. Height is going to be equal to 800. You can play around with that height field and kind of change how your app or your interactive map looks. And the other column is going to be the plot output. And I gave this a height of 600. Okay, so the next step is going to be our functions. So this is going to be the server input output. So we're going to have three different functions here. The first is going to be our leaflet for our leaflet map. So we'll say output watershed map, so we named it, and then we're going to do render leaflet. This is a function, so we'll bring in the curly brackets, and then from here it's basically the same process we did earlier with this. We're just going to be adding another thing here. It's going to be the circle markers, or our points from the temperature data. So leaflet, add tiles, add polygons, so add circle markers. The data for this is going to be the temp data, but we're also going to need to specify the lat and long, and I'm also going to want a pop-up, so when I click on each point or each circle marker, the site code will display and should tell you what site you're looking at. So this is going to be unique long, unique lat. The layer ID is going to be the site code. And there's going to be some aesthetics, so the radius, I'll give it a 3. I'll give it a blue, I think midnight blue is good. And then, so the pop-up, so I want the pop-up to be the site code. Okay, so that should be done. Close our function. The next part is going to be to generate our ggplot data in reactive. So in order to click on these different points and generate the plot that corresponds to the right site code, we can't just use this temperature data. We have to kind of create or make this function to make our ggplot data reactive, so that when we click on it, it's displaying the right data. So we'll call this ggplot data reactive. It's going to be a function. So the site code is going to be the input based on the click ID and temp data. Close the function. That's our ggplot data, and now we're going to want to actually generate our plots. And we'll do this with the output, so output plot. So this is going to be this one here. Is render plot, another function, and now it's just normal ggplot process. So ggplot. The data is going to be the ggplot data, not actually the temp data. Statics x is going to be the date time with the lower t. Y is going to be temp degree C. Group is going to be 1. And then I'll get rid of line plot. I like the black and white theme. Get some labels. This I only used 2017 temperature data, so I'll just call this summer 2017 first branch White River water temperature. X lab is going to be date. Y lab is going to be water temperature, degree C. And then lastly, I don't like the grids that come with ggplot, so I'll just remove those. Looking at the panel grid, element blank. Okay. Close the function, close that function. Should be good. We'll run this. And then lastly, to bring up our interactive map or our Shiny app, we just call Shiny app. And then our UI and our server. Come up. Okay, so I said there's going to be 2 columns, so this is where our map sits. And then if I click on one of these points, there should be a plot that displays on the right-hand side. And there we go. So we have our pop-up here that we set. So this is our site code, the first branch white 625. And we have our plot, summer water temperature. And then I can click on this other site over here, 498. And we have our plot that corresponds to that site. And that's about it. This was kind of a small scale of making an interactive map like this, but you could have a lot more sites. You could have an interactive map like Plotly, using Plotly probably, so you could kind of come in here, kind of see temperature data at specific days or even hours probably. But yeah, this is kind of just a general idea of how you can make an interactive map with different sites and different types of data. So hopefully this video was useful. And yeah, stay tuned for another video in the next couple weeks or so. Thanks.